Hi, I'm Benny Green, and I rock jazz. The scene has changed radically in the past 30 years since I was in my late teens. In that, in the early 80s, there were real great band leaders who a young person could aspire to play with, like Art Blakey. And with the passage of these great giants, more and more it's fallen to a younger generation as band leaders. There's a lot of talent, but the kind of leadership that we had back then is the rarest thing these days. So a young person, of course, if they're truly concerned with their musical development, they want to play with the best band leader they can. And these band leaders are, in fact, younger than the giants who were around when I was coming up. So sometimes there's a case of an 18 or 19-year-old who's aspiring to play with a band leader who's 24 or 25, who's out there on the scene right now. But the thing is, some of those band leaders, they're still finding their way. They don't have decades of experience behind them the way some of these band leaders that I got to work with did. But this is the generation that these young people are coming up in. And it's clear to see that every generation throughout the history of humanity has its advantages and disadvantages. So of course, you know, with the internet and MP3s, in one sense we have greater access to the recorded body of jazz than ever before. However, a young person that's growing up in an iTunes generation doesn't necessarily have the appreciation of listening to an entire album that someone my age or older would when we grew up only with LPs to listen to. So sometimes a young person will hear a tune that they like and they'll download the one tune, and when you get an MP3 format, it won't tell you what the personnel of the group is. So if you hear a track, say, by Sonny Clark, it doesn't tell you that Art Farmer's playing the trumpet and Jackie McLean's playing the saxophone. And you might really like what you hear going on there, but a young person now needs to understand the importance of doing more research because they're not getting all the information fed to them the way that we did when we had LPs and you could turn the record over and not only see the personnel written down, but read something in the liner notes about the history of these artists, who else they'd played with, and you can kind of begin to trace that. That's something I've always been fascinated in, is if I hear some music I like, where did it come from? Because it didn't just spring out of nowhere. So this is very different for a young person, and it's important for me now as an educator to understand that this is the sort of paradigm that they're born into, and it's important for me, in passing the music along, to help a young person get to the music. I feel very strongly, if we're talking about real jazz, and I need to qualify now by using the word real, because as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, the jazz word is used so loosely these days. But if we're talking about real jazz, it is very important to listen to records, understand what's come before. If for no other reason, if one feels a personal calling to somehow want to personalize the music, extend it, take it forward, which I think this music was created to do, you have to understand where it's been, what's come before, and there's skills and disciplines to be developed that we can learn from listening to the recordings. And most of all, the feeling of this music, the spirit of jazz, it's there on the great records. So these days, a publication, a jazz publication, could very well be promoting and propagating a young band leader who's just been signed to a label and is getting a lot of press, and this person might be touted as the new messiah, when in fact they could be very young, but getting a lot of hype, and sometimes being a young person, as I've experienced myself, believing the hype, believing these people that say you're the new thing, when in fact you're who's out there right now, and power to you for what you're doing. But sometimes the system, so to speak, creates some false messiahs, some young talented people. Maybe they're cute, but they do not have what Art Blakey and Betty Carter and Freddie Hubbard and Ray Brown and Oscar Peterson and other band leaders I've got to work with have, just in terms of having years of experience of playing music for people, not just as a personal indulgence that is being called the new thing, but learning about communication and reaching an audience, which takes a lot of time to learn how to do that. It's such a different world now for a young person coming along seeking true leadership. I can only say that I'm so thankful that I came along at the time that I did, that my father introduced me to the music and showed me what this really is. I grew up hearing my father's records, Charlie Parker and Thelonious Monk and Ray Charles, Billie Holiday, Bessie Smith, Errol Garner, people like this. And that feeling, that joy, that life-affirming kind of swing that we get in those records, that's timeless. That's what jazz is. Jazz, for me, is not just something where you get to choose your own notes and then a writer explains why it's valid or why it's good. It's something that actually gets inside you, makes you want to tap your toe, and there's an excitement to it. It's happening in the moment, and it's got some kind of blues to it, some kind of cry that people can feel, people of all cultures and all ages. You know, it's just such a different world for young people now, and I just try to do my best as a leader and as a teacher to represent the real music.